To talk about some global challenges. Globalization has improved the lives of people, but there are a lot of things that we still face, like poverty, disease, and natural disasters. A couple things we're going to talk about. 20% of the world's people live on less than $1 a day. Poverty has many causes. Sometimes it's a lack of natural resources that you can offer to other countries for trade or exchange or business, warfare, poor government planning, rapid population growth, but we're not able to feed the population, and one result can be famine, which means that there's an extreme shortage of food. Disease. Disease is a challenge. Because we fly internationally, we ride ships, we travel all over the world, diseases spread rapidly. So like in 2002, we had an issue with SARS. It was in China, and then it spread to the rest of Asia, Europe, and some of the Americas due to people flying internationally. When people are killed in a large amount, it's called an epidemic. And the epidemic that you learned about would be before this, our modern era, would be the Black Plague, and how contagious diseases outbreak with a large amount of people. With diseases, you can probably think of several other diseases that you've heard that have spread or threatened us, like swine flu, bird flu, things like that. So when we talk about life expectancy, one thing that you understand is that life expectancy is how long people are, on average, projected to live. And we looked at life expectancy of other countries the other day in class. This is a chart from 2002, so this chart is 15 years old. But if you notice, you can look at the colors and see that some of the colors show you from green to red life expectancy. That means average how long somebody is going to live. So if you notice, countries that have had warfare, areas that have had war, that are in poverty, people don't live as long, whereas people who live in developing or developed countries, with a strong economy are living well, such as Canada, the United States, Brazil, Germany, Norway, areas like that, even China. But if you notice, like South Africa, Zambia, some of those areas that have had issues, war, anything like that, the people live not as long. So first of all, we have to talk about the environment. We're continuing to grow in our population. And so you have to think about, how do we balance keeping our resources, our trees, our air pure, but also living off of the environment. And so a couple things we have to talk about is like resource use. Our population has grown from 1 billion to 6 billion since 1800. And if you think about 1800, you've got to think about industrialization, which caused mass production, factories. But it also uses up resources. And so our challenge is having sustainable development, which means items that we develop that we can sustain and maintain our environment, but also maintain quality of life for humans. So a couple things we have to talk about with sustainable development. Economic development that does not permanently damage resources. Like, we should not tear down the Amazon if it's not going to grow back. Does that make sense? And it's not going to. And so when we talk about developing for humans and causing a good human life, we have to think about being careful with the resources and the environment that we have. So we try to limit use of resources, set aside areas where they're protected from development. And when we talk about forests, you have Africa, Asia, Latin America, Amazon, which is part of Brazil. You watched a video on it. And so what people do is we clear trees to build and to expand and to live. And this is called deforestation, because trees are burned, cut down to make mines, to farm, and for ranching, and they do not grow back. And so what happens is we're taking away the forest of our natural land, and so even animals and plants become extinct as a result. And remember, the environment is an ecosystem, so it all depends on each other. When we talk about deserts, we have desertification, which means that because we overfarm the land, it could be drought, it could be overuse of the land and stripping it of its nutrients. We have desertification, which means that land that was once fertile becomes like a desert because we've stripped the nutrients. And when it is a desert, it is useless to humans. We can't farm on it. Animals can't live there. Another thing that you have to think about is pollution that comes from vehicles, factories, and items like that. We didn't really face a serious issue with pollution until the Industrial Revolution. And so the threat is that the Industrial Revolution brought new processes like factories and air pollution, even pollution to the water. Like if you dump nuclear waste or whatever is created out of a factory into the water or the land, it can make the land less fertile. And it also, by the 1960s, we noticed that pollution can harm humans. How do we fight it? A couple things. First of all, we have to address the issue of global warming. Like, is there truly a rise in surface temperature of the Earth over time due to the destruction of the environment? Scientists believe that air pollution is from human activity is causing global warming, which means melting of ice caps, loss of animal life, plant life, and that's overall hurting people. So a couple things that global warming can bring is rising sea levels, the loss of animals, more storms, and precipitation. Precipitation is water, and a decreased area for agriculture. If we can't grow food, we're going to have problems helping maintain people as well. Like if we have a lack of food, that means people die. And so when we talk about medical engineering and genetic engineering, after World War II, there was a great push for medicine and the study of genetics. So we have vaccines to prevent infectious diseases. So a couple infectious diseases you could think about are polio. Like nobody suffers from polio anymore because we have vaccines. Chickenpox, smallpox, what else? Typhoid, things like that. People don't really get anymore because we're vaccinated. Measles, mumps, those are not diseases that children suffer from or adults anymore due to vaccines. And we created things like ultrasounds, lasers, computer technology. So we talk about genetics. Genetics is the study of genes and heredity. So we can like predict diseases that could be in families, things like that. And then vaccines are used to treat diseases. And then when we talk about genetic makeup, like altering it, like we have genetically modified food, which means that the food can last longer. It grows faster, and it can, they're hardier and they're more for production because the population's growing. And so a lot of times, like genetically modified foods are like grapes that don't have seeds, or tangerines that don't have seeds, or an apple that tastes like a grape. Like those are things that we have done to alter food to make it hardier and last longer for the human population.